sounds of life they bring.
Good morning. Welcome to the Napa Valley Center for Spiritual Living Sunday service. So glad you could join us, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. It's always great having you join us. If this be your first time or you're, boy, what is it now, 4 or 5 months we're going on here. We appreciate your continued watching us and being a part of this and enjoying it and feeling like you can clap and sing along right where you're at. So we have a special guest today, Amy Bishop, all the way from Calgary. So now it's an international music program we have here. So please welcome Amy Bishop for our opening song.
Till I get to the top, one step at a time. No doubt about it, won't stop till I get to the top, one step at a time. Gonna climb this mountain, won't stop till I get to the top, one step at a time. No doubt about it, won't stop till you get to the top, one step at a time. Behind what's weighing me down, wash away what's holding me back. My heart is falling, face forward, feet on the ground, living in this courage I found. The sky is calling, gonna climb this mountain, won't stop till I get to the top, one step at a time. No doubt about it, won't stop till I get to the top, one step at a time. Leave behind what's weighing me down, wash away what's holding me back. My heart is falling, face forward, feet on the ground, living in this courage I found. My heart is calling, gonna climb this mountain, won't stop till I get to the top, one step at a time. No doubt about it, won't stop till I get to the top, one step at a time. One step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Such a pleasure to have you here. You have such a unique style that has rocked us at Asilomar and other Center for Spiritual Living events. You've been part of my heart, and I think everybody can say that your music brings inspiration and love and joy and a certain grit to it that just brings us hope and joy. So thank you so much, Amy. Thanks for being with us here today.
So please join me in meditation. And so close your eyes and feel your heart softening and opening to the spirit that is all around us right now. And just know that we are all God-centered and that we are here as one family, as one voice, as one heart beating for the entire world. And so for these next few moments, allow yourself to immerse into that knowingness that we are one. And now, with the energy that is all around, I'd like to give a few words about my life this year. And everybody's had this year life, right? So we all know that my husband of 37 years died 5 years ago, May. And I was happy that he was released from this cancer that I had, but I was also terrified to go it alone. And so I've really been searching for a replacement husband. And that's been really frustrating. I felt like I've lost my identity and who am I? So in January, I picked up my journal, the place where I release my thoughts and my needs, my wants and my desires and hopes. And I know that my heart is opening to what really needs to happen in my life. I realize that life is hard being alone, but that's what I have. And so I need to make it work for myself. So in February, I decided to, and I had a chance to take this trip to Morocco for 10 days as a single woman on a tour with 17 other people. And it totally changed me. I met new friends, and I just felt that the colors and the sights and the sounds and the smells and the people of Morocco really enlivened me. It really connected me back to the ground, to the earth. It filled me with hope and a new sense of myself. And I came home refreshed and alive and grateful for all that I have. And I realized that I can love and live and be happy being alone. But then a week later, the pandemic hit, the quarantine. No more dancing and going out with my girlfriends, and certainly no more searching for that replacement husband. And I was fine for the first couple of months, but I watched a lot of television, a lot of news. I drank a lot of wine. And I found myself waking up on the couch a lot at 4 a.m. with the television still on. And I noticed that my body was stiff with inactivity. And then I fell and broke my right arm. And all I could think of was, thank God it wasn't my leg or it wasn't my dominant arm. But my life really felt like that sad song, Is This All There Is to Life? Oh man, I was tired, I was numb, and I really felt for the first time that I'd lost my faith. I was just bottomed out. But deep inside me, because I've been in this church practice for so long, 20 years, I knew that that wasn't the truth of who I really am. I know that I am filled with the DNA of God, and I know that is alive in me. I just had to find it again. So in my home, walking around, I was going through my books, and I picked up an unread copy of Byron Cody's Loving What Is. And I read the four questions that she says will change your life. I read those, and then I let the book sit out and looked at the title of the book as an affirmation for every day, loving what is. I knew the universe was telling me to slow down, to take it easy, and that this was my time to self-reflect and redirect my life. I needed to say yes to life, and I needed to look around and ask, how can I make my life better? As soon as I did that, I realized there was so much to do. I felt overwhelmed and with my life, my house, my yard, everything. But hey, now I have the time to do it. So now I listen to what needs to be done every day in my life, and I let the garden talk to me. I know that my attitude matters. that there's a difference between chores and a difference between projects. So I'm choosing to look for the projects in my life that push me forward, that are creative, fun, and uplifting. And I move stuff around all the time in my house and outside, sort of like setting the feng shui in a different way. I'm tired of that same old news on television, so I stopped watching it. I can't change it anyway. I'm just like everybody waiting for November, right? So I do creative television instead, and I found that cooking show Chopped is a wonderful way to experiment with different foods and different things and get creative with what I have around the house. And I found these wonderful Spanish sagas that go on forever. There's a famous one called The Grand Hotel, and it's all English subtitles. But when I watch it, it's like watching a book because I have to read the subtitles. But a lot of that Spanish is coming in to my consciousness again. And it's really nice. Escuchen. I'm escuching. And I do the science and the National Geographic channels too. When I feel lonely, I call a neighbor. And when my house is getting neglected, I put my headphones on and listen to music while I'm cleaning. And it really, it's amazing how that transforms me. When I'm tired of waking up on the couch at 3 a.m., I just cut back on the wine and I go to bed when I'm actually tired. I know my body needs to move. I can't go dancing anymore with my girlfriends, and I can't go to the gym, but I can go out and walk in the fresh air, and I do that. When I'm tired of my own cooking, I go get some takeout from a restaurant nearby. And when I miss the company of my friends, I have a small potluck outside in my yard. And when I need help, I ask for it. I have so many great neighbors that have fixed my sprinklers, that have fixed my refrigerator, that are just there for me when I need them. They're wonderful. And I'd like to say this quote from Ralph Marsden as a closing gesture, that happiness is a choice and not a result. That nothing will make you happy until you choose to be happy. That no person will make you happy unless you decide to be happy. And your happiness will not come to you. It comes only from you. So thank you all. And so it is.
There's more than one road to every destination. There's more than one path to any place you go. And the clearest way for me might be the wrong road for you. Different paths, but you get to choose. 'Cause there's more than one road. More than one road. There's more than one road to get you where you're going. We're all unique expressions of the ever-present Spirit. It's in all that we are, and in every voice we hear it. There is only one life, but how you live, that's your decision. Be carried along. Or you can choose to have a vision, 'cause there's more than one road. More than one road. There's more than one road. Get you where you're going. It isn't how you get there that's the measure of your worth. 'Cause the robbers many pass to God as there are people on this earth. There's more than one road. More than one road. There's more than one road. Get you where you're going. There's more than one road. More than one road. There's more than one road. Get you where you're going. Get you where you're going. To get you where you're going.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Amy. That song was beautiful and the cattail was inspiring. So I just love Amy's music. I'm really happy that she's here today. So today we're talking about none are free until all are free. And what an apropos topic for this for this time. It's really funny. I was kind of laughing about it. These topics and these outlines were created almost a year ago. And a year ago, none of us could have possibly imagined the world that we're living in today. And yet here we are, and this topic, this talk title comes up, and it's really been working me, because there's so much there. There's so much there with everything that's going on in our country and our world, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the arguments about what's best to do for getting rid of this COVID-19, and just all of the different things. It really seems to kind of all boil down to freedom. And what is freedom, and how is freedom showing up in our world collectively and individually? And this idea of none are free until all are free, it's not a new idea. It's been spoken by multiple people throughout the last couple of centuries. First to say it that I could find, although I'm sure it was probably said before, was Emma Lazarus. She said, "Until we are all free, we are none of us free." And if y'all recall, Emma Lazarus was a Jew, and she was speaking about Jewish oppression, and this quote was in 1883. And she is the one that wrote the New Colossus, which is the poem that is inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." That's Emma Lazarus. She said it. And then, of course, our beloved Martin Luther King Jr. "No one is free until we are all free." One of and the leader of the civil rights movement. And finally, Fannie Lou Hamer. She said, "Nobody's free until everybody's free." Now, you might not have heard of Fannie Lou Hamer. She's up on your screen right now, but this woman was a badass. I'm sorry, but I just have to say it. Like, there's just no better word. She was a civil rights movement activist, as well as women's rights and voting rights. She ran a cotton farm on an old plantation, and every single time that they began to turn a profit because it was a Black-owned farm, white people would come and destroy everything they had, and they could never get ahead. But because of that, it spurred her into action, and she said, no more. She is the one that said, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so she would gather groups of people, large groups, and they would sing gospel chants, and they would go and they would fight through the white people trying to stop them from gaining voter rights. And they would register to vote, and they would go vote together. She started the Freedom Democratic Party. This woman is amazing. And one of the things that Fannie Lou Hamer said, because she was all about freedom, she said, is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives are threatened daily, just because we want to live as decent human beings in America? And that is the question, because that is what we call ourselves in America. We call ourselves the land of the free and the home of the brave. And boy, are we brave. But we're not all equally free. That's the reality of it, is that not everybody has the same freedoms here in this country that we think that we all do. And it's not until we open our eyes and we become aware of this fact that we can begin to solve this issue that we're having. It is not the truth. The underlying spiritual principle is that all are free, but it is a fact that is playing out in our society right now. And what Kimberly Crenshaw, another activist who, if you remember, I talked about her a couple weeks ago because she coined the term intersectionality. What Kimberly Crenshaw says is we all know that where there is no name for a problem, we can't see a problem. And then when you can't see a problem, you pretty much can't solve it. If we're unwilling to see the problems, we can't solve them. And so as I was thinking about this topic of none are free until all are free, and I was thinking about how freedom looks different for different people, the thing that came to my mind is our prison system. And so I'm going to be talking about some of the statistics of our prison system in this country. And it's hard, it stinks. We don't want to look at it, but if we don't look at it, we can't name it. And if we can't name it, we can't see it. And if we can't see it, we can't heal it. So take a deep breath. So despite making up 5%, not even 5% of the global population, the US has nearly 25% of the world's prison population. We live in a system, in a society that believes that locking people up is the way to solve problems. And despite the fact that 32% of the US population is represented by African Americans and Hispanics, that 56% of the incarcerated population is African Americans and Hispanics. Now, part of this reason is the policing, and this has been discussed in our services. Reverend Jay has brought this up several times, and he's done an amazing job. And the reality is that a Black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without just cause than a white person. And the first time that I had a personal experience of this, I had a Black boyfriend in my early 20s, and we were out one night, I don't know, we went to a club or something, and we were coming home after midnight, and he was driving his car, and I was in the passenger seat, and before we left, he looked at me and he said, I just want to let you know, we're going to get pulled over. We're going to get pulled over. And I was like, what? Like, he had no drinks, nothing. And he was like, we're going to get pulled over. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And he said, I have never driven after midnight and not gotten pulled over by the police. Never. And sure enough, we got pulled over. And not only did we get pulled over, but I got taken out of the car and walked 50 yards down the road to be asked, are you really here on your own free will? Are you sure you want to be with him? And I was shocked, absolutely shocked. That was my first experience that, maybe I don't have the same freedoms that other people have. Maybe my freedom looks a little different out here in the real world, out here in this real world. We can debate on what real means. And because Black people are 5 times more likely to be pulled over without just cause, African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of white people. Those numbers kind of go together. And for African American women, they are imprisoned more than 2 times the rate of white women. And African American children are 14% of our total population, yet they're 32% of children who are arrested, 42% of children who are detained, and 52% of children whose cases are judicially tried as criminal cases. Breathe with me. And so this is a problem that has to do with Black Lives Matter. This is why we say Black Lives Matter, because the reality is that the statistics show that they don't matter as much as white people's lives when it comes to our systems, to the framework that we have in place in this country. And the prison system, on top of the racism that exists there, it also harms all of the people that are moving through it. The prison industrial complex is the fact that private corporations own prisons, and it is in their best interest for people to be in prison. And they pay our judges and our court systems to give harsher, stricter sentences, so that more people will be in prison so that they can make more money. The estimated annual value of prison and jail industrial output is $2 billion a year. We are making money off of imprisoning people, and mostly our BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous people of color. So that's heavy, heavy stuff when it comes to talking about freedom. But when we look at the definition of freedom in the dictionary, it says the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. And so the reality is that it is possible for somebody else to take away your physical freedom, but they cannot take away the freedom that is your divine birthright, because freedom is a spiritual principle. And so as we're looking at what does freedom mean and how are our freedoms or our rights being taken away, what we know is that even as we're longing towards this freedom, underlying that is the notion that we belong to freedom, that freedom is who we are at the very core of who we are. Anthony Ray Hinton was a Black man from Alabama who was arrested for a murder he did not commit, and all of the evidence showed that he did not commit it. But he was a poor Black man in Alabama, I believe in the 60s or 70s. And what he says is, in Alabama, justice isn't blind. She knows the color of your skin, your education level, and how much money you have in the bank. And so he was sentenced to death row, and he spent 29 years on death row before he was finally exonerated. And the first 3 years that he was on death row, he was completely silent. And all he did was contemplate murdering the judge who had sent him to death row. And then he woke up and he realized one day what he says in his book, The Sun Will Rise. Despair was a choice. Hatred was a choice. Anger was a choice. I still had choices, and that knowledge rocked me. I may not have had as many choices, but I still had some choices. I could choose to give up or to hang on. Hope was a choice. Faith was a choice. And more than anything else, love was a choice. Compassion was a choice. And from that moment on, he used those 29 years to change the lives of the other people on death row. He spoke to them from his cell. He changed lives. He was compassionate. He uplifted others. And he really shifted the lives of everybody he touched from within that prison cell. And the reality is that he found freedom within his mind before he found physical freedom. And so what I know about freedom and what I know about justice is that these are universal spiritual principles. And Reverend Dr. David Alexander, who is the senior minister at the Atlanta CSL. What he says about freedom, because we can live our lives in freedom, we can have an individualistic freedom in that we can go where we want to go, we can say what we want to say, we can do what we want to do. In some ways, some of us more than others. But what he says is the proper application of science of mind principles can give you a life of freedom. However, the principles cannot take you any further than the bondage experience of the least of these. We are, after all, one body. Therefore, for a world of true freedom, let us work to create conditions of mass liberation for all of our neighbors as well as ourselves. We are not showing up here on this planet as spiritual beings in human form by ourselves. We are all one. That is the truth of it. And so we are only as free as our least free person. We are only as free as our least free experience. And so it is all of our responsibility to show up for justice. Because remember, Cornel West says, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. And if we're talking about spiritual principles and the one mind and the fact that there is only this one thing going on, if this one thing is love and this one thing is justice and this one thing is freedom, then all of those things are one another. And so love truly is what justice looks like in public. And this is why in the protests that have been going on, the chants have been no justice, no peace. Because the two go hand in hand. We cannot separate them out. We cannot sit at home in the individualistic peace and justice that we hold if other people aren't experiencing it, because we are all the one. That is the reality of it. In the Jewish faith tradition, their ethical tradition is called Musar. And Rabbi Alyssa Weiss has a Musar practice. Every night she gets out a journal and she asks herself, what have I done to someone? What I hate to have done to me? And she gets really clear with herself. Edwene Gaines, in a similar fashion, every night asks herself, who have I put outside of my heart today? And that knowing that freedom includes all of those people and the way that we show up and the way that we look at one another, those questions are important, and they're important to be asked every day. The next question that Rabbi Alyssa asks is, how have I mistaken my privilege for my freedom? And I think about that question as I look at our world and where we're at and the arguments surrounding the ask of the CDC and the WHO for us to get rid of this pandemic, and how there's a lot of upset around taking away freedom. But the reality is that freedom cannot be taken away because it cannot be given. It is who you are at your core. And so just because freedom to you or to me may look like not having to wear a mask or not having to social distance or not having to stay at home, that is more of a privilege than a freedom. And those freedoms are not true freedoms if it means that other people aren't able to move through their lives freely because they're immunocompromised or because they're unable to wear a mask because of a physical condition or because they can't leave their house until they know they're safe because their body just can't handle getting an extra disease on top of a condition that they're already dealing with. And so I invite us to look at where am I mistaking my privileges for my freedom? And can I show up in a way that invites other people into their freedom in a bigger way? I'm doing the book study with Reverend Jay and Lorna Barker and a whole group of our community. And I am just, I want to say loving it, which is a hard thing to say, but I have been blown away by the level of depth that our community is willing to go to look at their own unconscious bias and to look at their own racist tendencies and to look at the ways that we have been benefiting from the unearned privileges of the color of our skin for the majority of people in the class. I have just been blown away at the power and the depth that our community is willing to go to, and so proud and connected. And last week, there was a story that was told in that class of a person who had been friends with somebody for 60 years, and their friend was constantly sending racist, oppressive emails in large groups to about 40 people at a time. And this person had gone to their friends one-on-one and they had said, please stop. I'm asking you to stop. This is inappropriate. I don't want these. Please respect me, respect our friendship enough. And their friend just refused to stop. And so finally they replied all to one of those emails, to all 30 or 40 of those people that were getting these emails constantly. And they said, I've tried to talk to you. I was trying to value our friendship, but this doesn't work for me anymore. And so I want to let you know that I no longer consider you a friend and I want you to take me off of this list. And I bless you on your way. And it was so hard. 60 years of friendship gone. Even though it wasn't in an instant, it felt like in an instant. But then over the next few days, multiple emails from others of those 30 or 40 people were coming in. I'm so glad that you said something because this is not working for me either. Please stop sending these. This makes me uncomfortable. I don't like this. This is not okay. And so what this person learned is that by standing in their own power, in their freedom, and in their voice, they gave permission to others around them to do the same. The more that we are able to stand in our own freedom, we give permission to others to do the same. And that is powerful. Because as we're looking at all of this stuff that's going on, as we're looking at our prison system and we're hearing these statistics and we're looking at Black Lives Matter and we're hearing these stories of things that have been done to our Black brothers and sisters, what we know, what this teaching teaches us is that everything that is happening out in the world is a manifestation of what is inside of us. And so when we look out and we see anything less than the freedom that is the divine birthright of every single individual, we know that there is something inside of us that is less than free. And so I ask you, how often do you stop yourself from speaking your truth? Because you don't want to mess with the status quo, because you don't want to have that conversation, because you don't want to disrupt the peace. How often do you put on a mask to show up and be with somebody? How often do you catch words in your throat or bite your tongue and don't say them out loud? Because every single time that we take away a little tiny piece of our own freedom within us, we are out picturing into the world something that is less than freedom for all. And freedom, because it is the oneness, because it is a divine spiritual principle, what we know is that it is a universal principle and not an individualistic practice. And so we can use our individual practices to tap into the universal principle of freedom, but it can never be taken away at its core. Albert Camus says the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. On Friday, our America lost two amazing men, which we're going to have a slide for you. Congressman John Lewis and Dr. Reverend C.T. Vivian. Both of these men were incredible civil rights activists. Both of these men were freedom riders. They were both instrumental in their own ways in the civil rights movement. Dr. Reverend C.T. Vivian was Martin Luther King Jr.'s friend and one of his lieutenants. He began the C.T. Vivian Leadership Institute in Atlanta to support Black men and women specifically, but all people in inclusive and diverse leadership. Congressman John Lewis, on top of serving our country as a congressman and always fighting for justice and for peace, he was always working towards what he called the beloved community, very similar to our world that works for everyone. He was described as one of the most courageous persons in the civil rights movement ever produced. And so both of these men passed away. They made their transition on Friday, and we honor them and the work that we did. And one of the ways that we honor them is by continuing to show up and to do our own work. And so I invite you to look within yourself and see where you are stopping yourself from your full freedom, and to continue to show up authentically and free in every moment. And as you do that, to give permission to those around you to do the same. And I also invite you to look out into the world at what is mine to do. What is mine to do in this situation? How can I show up and act for the freedom of all, knowing that freedom is a universal principle and not my individualistic right, but freedom is a universal principle. And from that thinking, I'd like to close with a poem by Rudy Francisco. And to set the context, he is a young Black man. And in light of the statistics of everything that we've heard from the Black Lives Matter movement, from everything that Reverend Jay has spoken about over the last several weeks, remembering Dolores Schilling's quote, "When the color of your skin is seen as a weapon, you will never be seen as unarmed." And so I invite you from that place, from that framework, to listen to the words of this poem by Rudy Francisco. She asked me to kill the spider. Instead, I get the most peaceful weapons I can find. I take a cup and a napkin. I catch the spider, put it outside, and allow it to walk away. If I am ever caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, just being alive and not bothering anyone, I hope I am greeted with the same kind of mercy. Let us go to prayer. What I know is that freedom is the divine birthright of all. Freedom is God showing up. Freedom is love in action. Justice is love in action. And I know and affirm that each and every one of us belongs to freedom. And that each and every one of us is freeing ourselves in such a way that we allow those around us to be more free. And that we show up and practice the spiritual principle of freedom together in this community, in this country, and in this world. And I just give great thanks for this beloved community that is doing this work together. And I simply let it go and allow it to be. And so it is. Oh, and now we're going to invite back Amy Bishop.
We're all different in so many ways. Some are sparks, some are fiery blades, but we are one. We are one. Some express as they dance on stage. Some express putting pencil to page, but we are one. We are one. We are born in this life. We are free, living spirit through humanity. We are one. One spirit, one mind, one God, one ever-present peace. One perfect being, being every living thing. One and only truth, one power, one hope. We are a cosmic kaleidoscope. See that man who's asleep on the street, broken skin on the soles of his feet. Well, we are one. We are one. See that girl in the Mercedes-Benz, beauty, money, surrounded by friends, but we are one. We are one. We're all made of this powerful stuff. We are beauty, we're more than enough. We are one. One spirit, one mind, one God, one ever-present peace. One perfect being, being every living thing. One and only truth, one power, one hope. We are a cosmic kaleidoscope. Oh. We are one with the earth and the moon. We are one with the blue-nosed baboon. We are one. We are one. We are separate drops in one sea. We're a leaf in a jungle of trees. We are one. We are one. With a spark that's creating a flame. We are perfect. We're one and the same. We